We are entering a very exciting panel discussion now on the future of science. And I will begin by introducing our wonderful panelists and speaker. And to begin with, we have with us Professor Dame Angela McLean, the Government Chief Scientific Advisor of the UK, having taken up the role in April 2023, and also the head of the Government Science and Engineering profession. Prior to this, and this I learned this morning, Angela was the Chief Scientific Advisor for the Ministry of Defense, and before that, a professor at Oxford University. We also have with us Professor John Holdren, a research professor in Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government and co-director of the Science, Technology and Public Policy Program in the School Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs. From January 2009 to January 2017, Dr. Holdren was President Obama's science advisor and Senate-confirmed director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, becoming the longest-serving science advisor to the president in the history of the position. But first, we have an amazing guest, Dr. Al Mandous, who currently serves as the president of the World Meteorological Organization and was elected to this prestigious position in June 2023. Dr. Al Mandous holds the position of Director General at the National Center of Meteorology also, and has been the permanent representative of the United Arab Emirates to the WMO since 2008. And we're going to begin by having Dr. Al Mandous opening this panel with his remarks, and then we are going to enter a panel discussion. But a very warm welcome to you.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. As a president of World Meteorological Organization, it is my great pleasure to be here in Iceland for the Arctic Circle Assembly 2025. It is my honor to deliver the opening remarks for the Future of Science session. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the government and the people of Iceland for hosting this important event, and the Iceland Meteorological Office for their contribution in the field of weather, climate, and water. Also, His Excellency President Grimson for inviting me to address this meeting. As many distinguished speakers yesterday noted that what happens in the polar region does not stay there. As the data analysis shows, what happens in the polar region is affecting everywhere as weather pattern change and sea level rises. The WMO 2024 State of Climate Report shows polar regions are warming 3 times faster than anywhere else on Earth. Over the past decade, glaciers loss was 30% more than the period 2000 to 2011. Arctic sea ice reached the second lowest extent ever recorded. Distinguished delegates, to address these challenges, we must embrace innovation, especially artificial intelligence, address data gaps, and promote open science and the free exchange of data. I assure you that WMO is continued and committed to advance our understanding of the cryosphere and its crucial role in regulating global climate. I am pleased to highlight key WMO initiatives. WMO's unified data policy, where WMO members have agreed to free exchange of data, the polar coupled analysis and prediction for surfaces project bring together scientists, operational centers, communities, and service provider. Focus on improving the impact of polar forecast, ensuring they are accurate, usable, and trusted. WMO will play key role for the next International Polar Year in 2032 to 33 to establish sustained international cooperation and service deliver for future decades. These WMO's efforts are supported by our 193 member countries and are a major contribution for the future of polar science. My own country, United Arab Emirates, may seem distant from the poles, but we are aware of the global impact. Knowing this, last year, UAE Cabinet approved that we should seek UAE's accession to the Antarctic Treaty and UAE's engagement with the Arctic Council. My government also established the Emirate Polar Program to advance a high-level research agenda that addresses the challenges in the polar science. I look forward to our panel discussion on the future of polar science and tangible outcomes. Thank you for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your opening remarks, Dr. Al Mandous. And I think I will begin. You mentioned AI in your remarks. And what we are seeing is that new technologies are developing at an exponential pace. We see a lot of opportunities in connection with scientific research. We might also see challenges. So maybe I will begin with asking you, Angela, you know, how do you see the future of science with this technology that's already here, artificial intelligence, and developing at this huge pace? Opportunities, but maybe also challenges.
So I'm super excited about it, actually.
Yeah.
I think there's great things coming down the road. Of course, we need to be careful. So I see three sorts of progress coming at different speeds. So first of all, I think we can look at what's happened with weather forecasting just in the last few years. So these are those subjects where the mathematical models are so good that you can use a mathematical model to generate a lot of pattern and then use AI to make a much more efficient model of that pattern and use it as a forecaster. As I say, I think weather forecasting's the sort of type example of that, but there's lots and lots of bits of science where the mathematical models are really good enough for that, mostly around physics and physical sciences. So that's one. And I think that will be really sort of on a timescale of about 5 years. A lot of, we're just going to see things ticked off, done, 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 done. And it'll be a race, and it's a race that will be won by players who have access to really a lot of compute, I would say. That's great. Not actually my kind of science, personally. The one I'm really excited about is the one where, you know what, the models aren't really good enough that we can generate a whole lot of synthetic data. And the type example for this is the solving of the protein structure problem through AlphaFold. And that's where we can gather lots and lots of data, but our previous ways of trying to model it just haven't worked out. We've been working on the protein folding problem for 40 years. And then it turns out that this very, very flexible new kind of modeling with enough very high quality data and also a good way of saying, yes, this model is a really good model. So remember, for protein folding, that rule was so great that we had a competition every year. We really could say, here's the best, this model won this year. And there, I think that this is the one that excites me most, because we can't really wait 40 years to do these in order to collect enough data. So I think there's a really fantastic opportunity for some of these problems to have some international agreement about, well, this is such a great problem, let's go after that one. And I don't think it's blindingly obvious what those questions, what the problems are that we should work on together. Mm-hmm. I've been asking around, not just, with some pretty serious people. And I think there's a really interesting piece of collaborative work internationally to pick off some great problems.
Okay.
And then a very interesting piece of work collaboratively, internationally, to gather the data so that we can use AI to solve these very exciting problems. And then the third one, and I don't know how long this will take, is even more exciting, and that's about thinking again about how are we going to gather data about social and behavioral science that is so good that we could go through that same process with those unbelievably important but very, very difficult questions. So that's what I see in the future of science. It's not particularly an Arctic science, but it's clearly applicable to all sorts of issues in the Arctic. And I know I'm being Pollyanna-ish, but I think there's a lot of great stuff coming our way.
Yeah, and some people even talk about the fifth industrial revolution when we have the combination of AI and then biomedics, so we are seeing a very fast-track development. But John, the challenges, I might then move over to you to think a little bit about the challenges, because we also need to be mindful that new technologies can be quite disruptive.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And noting that Dame McLean has talked about the exciting frontiers and the immense opportunities that lie ahead in both natural and social science, and that we're experiencing the beginning of, as she noted, even today. That's the good news. I want to give you the bad news, as the moderator has suggested. I want to talk a little bit about the threats to the future of science that could slow down or even prevent the progress that we all are hoping for and expecting. And those threats are of three main types. The first of these is the worsening of the perennial challenge of obtaining adequate funding for science. And that's a challenge that has always been most severe for fundamental research, research where the beneficial outcomes to society, to the economy, or to public health, or to national defense are not obvious. It's the nature of basic research that we don't know what the outcomes are going to be, but we know from historical experience that basic research in a portfolio way brings enormous returns to society. But you can't get industry to do all of the funding precisely because the returns are far away and uncertain. So the government has to bear the main burden of supporting this immensely important fundamental research. And government funding is in fact imperiled by a combination of three things. One is a squeeze on discretionary spending because of growing military budgets in a world, in an era of rising geopolitical tensions and rivalries. Secondly, rising spending on welfare and health care in a fast-aging population, which requires more of both. And third, the growing reluctance of many lawmakers to spend money on research projects whose benefits to the economy, to public health, to defense are not, in fact, clear in advance. A second category of threats to the future of science is the declining public trust in science and scientists that is, in fact, being eroded. The trust is being eroded by demagoguery and misinformation. And that's on the rise, unfortunately, in many parts of the world. It's had particular focuses on climate change, on pandemics, on vaccines, for example, on the science of environmental regulation.
But might I interact there, because this kind of exploded a little bit, this distrust in science during the pandemic. So,
yes.
so do you have any theory on that? Why do we see this growing distrust?
Well, I think there were two factors that account for it during the pandemic. One is the disappointed reaction to science's failure, if you will, to immediately resolve this problem without enormous societal damage and stress in the meantime. And the second factor during the pandemic was a degree of back and forth, which is usual in science, but not so prominent in public discussion, on what the best approaches are to various aspects of the problem. And one week, a bunch of prominent scientists would say one thing, and the next week, some other prominent scientists would say a different thing. Again, not unusual in science at all, but unusual in science so directly related to the public's perception of its well-being. But the third threat, and it's related to the second one, is the rise among the world's democracies of increasingly autocratic leaders who themselves engage in and explicitly encourage the kinds of demagoguery and misinformation that I've just been talking about, while seeking to actively suppress science in domains where the findings of science might undermine the leader's political preferences. And this has been, I'm very sorry to say, particularly evident in the United States since January of this year, where the Trump administration has fired or driven out thousands of scientists from federal roles that are important: National Institutes of Health, National Science Foundation, Department of Energy, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Environmental Protection Administration, NASA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They've left by the thousands. These are people that society needs, that the government needs, in positions to provide good advice to policymakers and good advice to the public.
But one question on that, John, because the US has been, of course, a leading country when it comes to science, universities, doing research.
Yeah.
What will be the long-term effect of what's happening now?
Well, you know, that's a long subject, but what one can mention is, first of all, that these gaps in capacities in the government will not be quickly filled, even when a government of a different complexion comes along. Secondly, the attacks have included direct attacks on the nation's defense research universities. And I have to say Harvard has been a principal target, but far from the only target in this domain. Slashing research funds, slashing overhead rates, threatening endowments, threatening the tax status of foundations that fund many of the parts of university research that the government doesn't fund. And the cuts continue. The Trump administration has proposed a budget for the next fiscal year 2026, which would cut the National Institutes of Health, the world's gold standard medical research organization, by 40%. It would cut the National Science Foundation by almost 50%. And while Congress is inclined, it appears, not to accept those proposed cuts in the budgets that it approves, the unfortunate reality is that President Trump has proven willing to defy the will of the Congress on many different issues so far, including shutting down programs that the Congress has approved, rescinding funds for ongoing research in midstream that has been supported by funds appropriated by the Congress. And so we can't be sure that we will not see these deeper cuts. All of this is a threat to the health of science in one of the countries in the world that has been seen as a bastion of scientific research. There are others, obviously. The European Union is another center of extraordinarily important scientific research. China is another extremely important center of scientific research.
So we might see a shifting landscape.
It is a shifting landscape,
in science.
and it's extremely worrisome. And it should be extremely worrisome, not just to people like me who are directly involved as a university professor and research manager, or directly experienced, as I was as Obama's science advisor, with responsibilities for advising him on these matters over a period of 8 years. But it should be of concern to everybody, because science plays such a crucial role in driving the innovation that strengthens our economies, that improves public health, that protects our environment, that strengthens our national defense. All of that is at risk from the demolition of the science ecosystem in the United States. And what's even worse is that this is serving as something of an example to other autocratically oriented leaders in other countries, in other democracies, who are thinking maybe they can do similar things.
Yeah. I will go now to you, Angela, again, and then to you, Abdulla. But first, Angela, this distrust in science, which is also connected to the fact that we're living in a different media landscape where we have disinformation, misinformation. It's very difficult for many to identify what's science from something that looks like science and tastes like science but is not science. So what, you as the Chief Scientific Advisor to the UK government, is this an issue in the UK? Is this something that you want to tackle, and how?
So, yes, this is an issue in the UK, but not actually. I mean, if you survey people in the UK, their trust in scientists and engineers is high. But that does not mean that we do have real problems with misinformation and disinformation. The first half of this week, I was away in the wonderful city of Manchester, very good home to excellent science, with all the chief scientific advisors. In the UK, every single ministerial department has its own chief scientific advisor, of whom I'm the sort of fairy godmother. And we all went away together, and this was one of our topics of conversation. And we had it is for sure an issue. What we came up with as a sort of list of things that we need to do ourselves to start with is to do a proper classification of, well, what do we mean by these things? So we know the difference between disinformation and misinformation. We agreed that we needed to be very careful not to throw into that bucket legitimate political debate that we might not agree with. So I think we need to be pretty clear why we think something is either mis or disinformation and not just an unpalatable opinion. So there was that. We did also think about classifying by the kinds of harms, because of course there are harms to individuals. There are probably, I think, the greatest harms are the harms to our democratic systems if people make decisions on the basis of information that is untrue. And I think that's the one where it is hardest for us. Remember, we are all civil servants, and what we are and aren't allowed to say in the political domain has to be thought about. But actually, I mean, the whole point of science is that you figure out which things do I think actually could are true enough that they might, you could actually prove that they were wrong. So we came away thinking, oh, we do have a role here. We're not terribly excited about it because it's going to be horrible. Being the people who stand up there and say, I mean, I'll give you an example. We had a big scare about a product that was to be fed to cows so that they released less methane. The CSA, for the Food Standards Agency, wanted to go on the record explaining the trials that have been done with this product. The Food Standards Agency did a risk assessment and said, we can't let you do that for your personal safety. So we'll address that too. So we have to think about maybe we'll just make ourselves a set, we don't quite know what to do about it. But the main thing is, I think we decided we will be scientific about it. We will figure out what does actually work, because I don't think, we have quite a few case studies so far, but we don't have a good body of evidence about what works and what doesn't work to counter this kind of information. I think we've got as far as agreeing that somebody's going to have to stick their head above the parapet.
But you, Abdulla, and sorry for calling you by the first name, but this is very Icelandic, and we do this to our friends. So you are the president of the World Meteorological Organization. You visited the Icelandic Met Office today, and when we talk about conveying science to the public, the Icelandic Met Office is probably the one that the Icelandic public knows best, because we are obsessed by weather. We are absolutely obsessed. We think about weather in the evening and in the morning and in the middle of the day, and it usually changes within one day. When you look at the world, because you are now the president of the World Organization of Met Offices, so Are they experiencing this distrust, or are they maybe, because they are in such close connection to people's lives? You know, what is your experience and thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I did really visit the Iceland Met office yesterday, and I don't think they have only weather issue.
No.
They have many issues. I think this is a very harsh environment that you are living in.
Yeah.
And the people, yeah, it is, it has different variety of weather,
Problems.
here.
Yeah.
So, yes, so I think they are doing a good job here. Although they are very small number of people they are working with. And what amazed me that here also the politician and the people believe in them. So they have like a percentage. They did a questionnaire, and they did a study that 80% of the population believe in them, which is this is the biggest number I see.
Okay.
So it is very encouraging, really, and really they are doing excellent job. I've been all over, the national centers in the world, and I think those people are doing excellent job. And you are, as a prime minister before, I think you can also give a vision how they are working,
Yeah, and they are, of course, following volcanic eruptions, avalanches, etc. here in Iceland, and they enjoy trust, but I'm intrigued to hear that this is the highest trust rate that you have seen.
Yes, I think, yes, that is what we believe, when most of the people, when they hear about weather people, they say, oh, they are wrong, right? Yeah, this is a common thing about us, but here they have, because of the harsh environment, I think, the people, they have to listen to the government identity and believe in what they say,
Okay, John, you are asking, but I'm going to pass the floor to John, but then I'm going to open up the floor to you. And I know there will be questions to this amazing panel, so please, John.
Just a couple of quick points. I want to clarify that in the United States, while respect for science and scientists has fallen a bit, it remains higher than respect for virtually any other category you can think of. Scientists are still more respected than teachers, they're more respected than police, and they're more respected by a factor of 3 than members of Congress.
You're saying this to a former politician, but thank you.
The other point I want to make very briefly about the question of how do you distinguish between science that's really science and science that isn't, and how do you deal with that in the policy process? I would agree with everything that Angela has said, but I would emphasize 2 things. One is when you're involved in science advice to government officials, you have to be clear not only about what science believes it knows, but how it knows it. What is the basis for the conclusions that you're offering? And the second thing is you have to be absolutely clear about what you don't know. If you pretend to be all-knowing, if you pretend to have the answers to everything, every politician will recognize that that's nonsense, that it's not possible. So you have to be clear about what you don't know and willing to talk about how you could eventually find out, either individually in terms of a specific piece of advice or as a society in terms of the science we need to do to better understand a particular challenge.
But working with governments, because all of you have worked with governments, is that maybe, Abdulla, the most important thing that scientists understand, what they know and what they don't know when they're working with governments?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. And I think we have, as a scientist, we have to speak the language of the government.
Yeah.
We have to be trusted, transparency, knowledge. We have to educate them of what we are doing in a simple things. Then we get, I think, their trust. Example, our country, they are giving us a big support because they trust in us. And they think when there is a crisis, we will be, be beside them. And we are one of the people who are involved in the strategy of the country.
Exactly.
Yes, so we have to show we have to work hard and show the government that we are in when they need us. So on that, you will get a lot of support, I think, yes.
Angela, your experience on working with governments,
I think what they said.
Yeah, you agree.
I mean, and I think above all this issue of here's what I know, here's how I know it.
Yeah.
So that's, and that's standard, it's a version of standard scientific transparency, isn't
Right.
it? This is what I did
Absolutely.
to find it out.
Yeah.
And here's some stuff I don't know, and also what, or here's, I think in particular what's useful for people making policy is here is some stuff that's controversial, and here's why it's controversial.
Exactly.
So here's why you will be hearing different voices from different people. Because if you don't know any science, and many of the people that I speak with don't, that's very hard to judge. Why am I hearing these different things from people who seem to know what they're talking about? And I do think that's an important part of our job as science advisors, is to be very clear about those bits of uncertainty, and when we can, explain where the uncertainty is coming from.
I think the experience during the pandemic here in Iceland was that every Icelander was gradually a doctor after 2 years, because we spoke so much about, you know, really what we knew, what we didn't know, what we were learning through the process. So actually I experienced a huge participation in society in really dealing with these unknowns and also understanding why we were doing what we were doing. But now it would be great to have some light so I can see you, and I am sure that I already see a hand over there, and and another there, so I knew that, okay, loads of questions. We'll begin there. And keep your hands raised so the microphones, the people with the microphones see you.
Thank
Please.
you. Danielle Young, University of Leeds. And I had a question about, we had the discussion about the situation in the US with major cuts to funding and how that represents a challenge to global science, because US funding has traditionally dwarfed scientific investment in other parts of the world. But UK universities are facing a massive funding crisis. Several are at risk of closure, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of government intervention to address that. And you've seen similar attacks on scientific funding and university funding throughout Europe. So is there any prospect for filling the vacuum that will be created by the attacks on US scientific investment, particularly in Europe? Because that seems to have a major effect on the short, medium, and long-term prospects for scientific research. So I just wanted to see if you could touch that a bit.
And are you asking anyone specific, all of the panel?
Probably the UK advisor, but really the whole panel, I think.
Angela, please.
Very good. So as you know, I don't handle the funding mechanism. That's handled mostly by UKRI into UK universities. Let me tell you that the UK government is extremely aware of the fragility of our universities, and we spend a lot of time thinking about how to support them.
I had another question, one here and one in the back. Yeah, there. Yeah, first this one.
Hi, my name is Anastasia. I'm from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. I don't remember who said it, but there was mention in the panel that the people must trust the government in terms of science. But I was wondering, what is the way forward in terms of creating trust between scientific progressions and everyday individuals, especially with growing awareness of misinformation and disinformation, especially with AI right now?
Yeah, so the trust between the public and the scientists, what can we do?
I think it's partly a challenge for the education system in that, to the extent that we teach science in our elementary schools, for example, we tend to teach facts rather than teaching how science works. And how science works is terribly important for public confidence in science, because they need to know what peer review is. They need to know what the cumulative character of science is. They need to know what the self-correcting character of science is when research not only passes peer review and gets published in a journal, but then is subject to the scrutiny of the whole field of people who work in that domain, who are just dying to make their reputations by finding something wrong with it. And that aspect of science needs to be understood by the public, because it's a cornerstone of why science is believable.
And I think we can also do, there is always more work to do to explain, well, why is it? Why do we think that childhood vaccines are safe enough that it's worth taking them? We must not, I think we need to be very careful about exactly what we say. But there's no reason why an intelligent child shouldn't understand the concept of how many kids did you need to look at to be really sure? And, ditto, what are the trade-offs you have to worry about? And I agree with you that we had a lot of debates about that during COVID because it was such a live issue for us. I definitely remember turning on the radio and hearing a discussion about, well, of course, no vaccine is completely, perfectly safe, but blimey, this one's a lot safer than catching this disease. So I completely agree with John. I think this needs to be way earlier in everybody's education. I've sat, this is a long time ago, but I've sat on panels where people said, no, we just have to tell the population to listen to their physician and do as they're told, and that is absolutely not the right answer. We need to equip people to make good decisions about the choice of risks that they will choose.
How to make people more, grow their understanding of science.
I think communication, we usually, as a scientist, we want the people to understand our language. We should revise the language. We should change our language as a scientist to the public language. Because not everybody should learn our science. We have to learn their language and let them know in their language what we mean.
And of course, every child is intimately familiar with the idea of fairness.
Excellent. Now, I think there's a question there in the back, and then there is also one here, so a microphone here. So I think we will just take these together. So first.
Hello, my name is Zoe Vallassands. I am from the Agricultural University at Iceland. My question surrounds incorporating AI into climate change research. As we know recently, tech giants like Sam Altman and Meta, OpenAI, etc., have become present at political events that you wouldn't necessarily expect computer scientists to be present at. What are the risks and opportunities of these tech giants becoming friendly with political figures and then that effect on climate change?
Okay, let's memorize that question. The friendship of the tech giants, which control more than most of the politicians in the world, with very powerful politicians. But I will have another question here. Yes, that's you.
Hi, my name is Julian Burgos. I am a scientist. I'm a researcher at the Marine and Freshwater Research Institute here in Iceland. And I'm always worried about this, the political role of the scientific community. Particularly when you see that some political parties basically deny the scientific process and deny the functionality of science, how we as scientists can, in a way, remain unbiased, but at the same time engage with the process without losing this credibility. So,
political participation of scientists. Okay. I will pass the floor now to you. We'll begin with the tech giants. Who wants to? I can see you smiling, John.
No, I'll take tech giants. First of all, I think we cannot complain that tech giants take advantage of their opportunities to talk to policymakers. Everybody should have opportunities to talk to policymakers, and certainly every scientist has a right to express their views to their policymakers. As much right as every other member of society, not more and not less. The notion that scientists, because they are supposed to be objective, should divorce themselves from the political process, I think is an error. The fact is that science matters to policy and policy matters to science. And if scientists are unwilling to engage in either of those directions, either science advice for policy or trying to influence the way policy affects science, we're going to get very, very bad results.
Angela.
I think so long as you're true to your scientific values, I would say let rip. I mean, I can't. There are certain things about my job that I can't get involved in political debate because I'm a civil servant at the moment. But, I mean, remember that you have a set of rules to live by about, well, what do you know, how do you know it? What would you do if somebody came along and said, well, I did the thing that you did and I didn't get the same answer? You ought to be quite upset about that. And I think we should remember, the enormous power of that process to figure out, particularly how the natural world is working, but also, we were calling earlier on to understand each other. And I agree with John. I mean, the more good science politicians hear, the better.
What do you say, Abdulla?
Yeah, I agree with you. The true science, the politician will agree in it. So I think the good scientists all will be respected by the politician, I think.
But when it comes to political participation of scientists, sometimes their science gets undermined because they have political opinions. And all of us are kind of multi-layered persons, so we both have opinions, but we still can be good scientists, right? Is this a problem?
Well, we have to be alert to the danger of letting our biases or our values affect our scientific conclusions.
Yeah.
We need to be clear in our advising, for that matter, between what we communicate about what we believe science is and knows and what we believe about what ought to be done. Those need to be separated.
Yeah.
And because nobody is perfect in separating those things, we rely on strength in diversity. We rely on the proposition that our political leaders will hear from more than one voice, that in the scientific community, on any given issue, people will hear more than one voice. And so you have at least the potential to spread out the effects and diminish the effects of biases.
We have room for time for one more question. Do I see any hands in the air? Yeah, there in the back. Yes, please.
So I have a question for Dame McLean. I'm from Wales, but I've been studying here in Iceland for 4 years. Considering the high cost of education and the restriction of movement of people by Brexit, how does the UK intend to be attractive to students and young scientists, especially in Arctic science, when the Nordics have much more affordable education? Thank you.
That is a very difficult question. What can I say? What can I say? First of all, let's have a chat afterwards. And secondly, I think you raise a really important issue that is super important to us as a country in the UK, where we have benefited for years and years from having fabulous people, including sort of tranches of people coming to the UK, particularly on European funding, for a while to do that, to do some of their training, and then going back to their own countries and being, I think, part of the really, glorious flowering of science that we've seen across Europe because of the great strength of the European funding scheme. It wasn't obvious when Horizon was set up that it would be the triumph that it's been, but it has been an absolute triumph. And I think you raise extremely good questions about what more shall we be doing to make the UK an extremely attractive place for people to live some of their scientific career.
We have, I will give you now 30 seconds each to tell me what's the biggest challenge and what's the biggest opportunity.
Oh, dear.
Is it funding, John? The biggest challenge, or is it the distrust?
I think I'm going to start with the biggest challenge. I think the biggest challenge is in education, in public education, in the education of policymakers, and in the education of scientists to understand more about how their democracies work.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest opportunity is exactly the same.
Education, yeah.
Education.
Angela?
I would say biggest opportunity, collaboration. So finding ways to work together, both because so much science requires collaboration across all sorts of different boundaries. And the biggest, Which way around?
Challenge.
The biggest challenge. I do think there is a challenge. I mean, obviously this is my lived experience of making decision-making in our governments well advised.
And Abdulla.
I think, I have been here 2 days, and I think we don't have to panic too much. So the panic is a problem that we have a good relationship with the politician. We don't have to spend our time talking about politicians. They will support us. They need us. And I think we don't have a problem. This is a short-term things. It will pass, and I think we will get the politician support with us. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I think this was a great end to a great panel, and let's applaud these wonderful panelists. Thank you.